Okay. What a phenomenal morning we've had. Join me in applauding all of those who spoke. Certainly Catherine and Sherry and Mike modeled exceptionally well what lighting the way really means. Incredible perspectives and information and data, insight on what we need to do in order to light the way. My name is Estes Tucker, and it is my great honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. And as I read this brief introduction, Bob Ray Sanders, I'm reminded of what our beloved Nelson Mandela said: a good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. When I think about Bob Ray Sanders, definitely a good head, definitely a good heart. Bob Ray Sanders writes for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, where he currently is vice president and associate editor. As a young journalist with the paper, he served as courthouse reporter and political writer before leaving to begin a distinguished career in broadcasting. Bob Ray worked for many years at the Dallas-Fort Worth PBS affiliate, where he served as reporter, producer, station manager, and vice president. He has received some of journalism's most prestigious awards, among them 5 awards from the Houston, New York, and Chicago Film Festivals, 5 Dallas Press Club Katie Awards, 3 Corporation of Public Broadcasting Awards, a Regional Emmy Award, a National Association of Black Journalists Award for the Best TV Sports Feature, and a National Headliner Award for Outstanding Investigative Reporting. According to his Star-Telegram bio, Bob Ray Sanders is often criticized for writing about things he could not have experienced, because some readers would say he can't be that old. He's not. The truth is, Bob Ray has been a professional journalist for 40 years, and in 3 media: newspaper, television, and radio. Fort Worth native who knows and cares about his community, and those with whom he shares this planet. This is a columnist who is not afraid to speak out on behalf of downtrodden people or the abused earth. Bob Ray is an inspiring opinion leader who writes often on the death penalty, as we know, and criminal justice issues as part of his weekly column in the Star-Telegram. He played a pivotal role in the editorial's board call for an end to the death penalty in Texas, as part of an editorial about the 500th execution. It's time to halt executions in Texas. This is June 22nd, 2013. The editorial cited moral grounds as one reason Texas should abolish the death penalty, as well as the risk of wrongful conviction and the arbitrary and discriminatory way that this punishment is imposed. The Star-Telegram became the 4th major newspaper in Texas to call for an end to the ultimate punishment, joining the Houston Chronicle, Dallas Morning News, and Austin American-Statesman in endorsing abolition of the death penalty. TCADP presented Bob Ray with its 2009 Media Award in recognition of his conscientious articles on the death penalty in Texas and lifelong commitment to justice. Please join me in welcoming our friend, a brilliant, passionate thinker, hero to many of us, Bob Ray Sanders.
Check and see if I had died and this was my funeral. That's what, let's give it to you. great heart and a great head. I'm going to try to do this briefly so you can get back on schedule. But I got to tell you, I've been walking around. I think I've been hugged more today than I have in the last 10 years. Because I'm seeing people I hadn't seen in so long. Just amazing. People have been on the battlefield for so long. So, first of all, let me say that I'm honored to be here with you. Talk about points of light. That's what I'm looking at out here right now. All of you are points of light. I mean, some of you I know have been in this vineyard for, oh my goodness, decades. Decades. So, let me get on. As I was thinking about your theme, for some reason I started thinking about church. I know we're in a church, and this is a great church. But it seems that most of my critics, the people who cannot stand me for my position on the death penalty, are all good Christians. Lord have mercy. Or as my great aunt would say, Lord help. I mean, and it's amazing because, man, they can quote some scripture. I mean, sometimes I use pages and pages of scripture, usually from the Old Testament, of course. And you have to remind them and say, well, you're Christian, right? I mean, you do pay attention to the New Testament too, right? And of course, and they'll go, well, the New Testament's against it too. You know that? And I said, no, I don't know that. I mean, tell me what Jesus said about it. Because the only execution that I can remember aside from his own that Jesus came up on, or was the one where they were trying to kill the woman who was the adulterer. They were going to stone her to death. And as I recall, he stopped it. So if Jesus stopped executions, shouldn't I be doing that? Should every Christian be doing that? What Jesus was doing, he stopped it. And I tell you, some of us in this room have been trying to stop executions for a long, long time. And I don't want to go too far, but when I go back to the Bible on your theme again, I go back to that very third verse of the Bible that says, let there be light. Well, Texas can use some light. Let there be light. Now, again, when those words were spoken, supposedly light appeared. And I got to be honest with you. I've been in Sunday school all my life, and go to church, and argue with preachers, and I get confused sometimes by the Bible, because when God said let there be light, there was light. But where did it come from? Because you see, the sun wasn't created until the fourth day. So the Bible is confusing for me, and keep in mind, folks, y'all sent me to work, or y'all asked me to speak. I had to get my Bible and my poetry books and everything else, and start going through it. And the more I went through the Bible, the more confusing I got, because you understand that the very first family, and I'm not talking about the Obamas, so be cool. But the first family had a murderer in it. The first family. The first man born on earth killed somebody. His own brother. And that story always confused me anyway, because here you are, Cain did what a lot of crooks do. You run, you hide. And what's confusing about that story is that there were only 4 people on earth. And one's dead, one's missing, so guess who the suspect is? And God is the investigator. But the point of that story, and I know I'm kidding, I hope I'm not offending anybody who's religious in this. I think there are a lot of religious people in here. What the amazing thing about that story is in relation to us today. The first person who killed somebody was not executed. He was banished. He was sent on his way. Nobody killed him. Maybe that's a lesson we need to take if we take back to my own journey here, believe it or not, I was in the 9th grade at segregated I.M. Terrell High School, right near downtown Fort Worth. And of all things, and it's hard, when I think back on it, it's amazing because we had a literature book, and in that book, it included poetry, short stories, and there was a short story by a Russian writer, of all things. And I know in Texas you probably should be quoting Russians. But there was a short story called The Bet, and if you haven't read it, go look it up and read The Bet. Because it was a story about a guy who had this dinner party, and they got into a discussion of capital punishment. This is in Russia now. But the two people who they're saying, you know, what's worse? Killing somebody or life in prison? What's worse? And I will never forget, the person who was arguing against the death sentence said, the state is not God. The state is not God. It should not have the right to take away that which it cannot give back if it should so desire. That was profound. That hooked me. I mean, I went through the rest of my high school years quoting that and debating the death penalty. Through my college years, and of course, to this day, I am still debating this issue. And before I sit down, I'm going to tell you some things that we have hope for, that we could be thankful for in terms of this issue, because I know some of you have been in it so long, there are days you get depressed. It gets old, it gets tiring, it's burdensome to carry on in this state on this issue, and dealing even with politicians who ought to know better, but they don't, because they're trying to get elected, and I'll deal with that in just a little bit. I know y'all want me to be political, but hey, listen, y'all knew me. As we struggle, and I started out in this battle, you know, it was just a little light. Maybe like you put on a candle for a kid's birthday cake. Wasn't a lot of people involved in this issue. Then more people came, and the light got a little brighter, like the flame of a cigarette lighter. And a few more people came and got involved. And light got a little brighter. We realized we could use flashlights now, shining in the corners of Texas history and Texas judicial reasoning and those judges, you know, depositions and all those things. We could shine some light in places that a light hadn't been shown in a long, long time in this state. And then I got here today, looked at all these folk in this room, and you know what? We got a searchlight. We got a searchlight. We're on this thing. You know, you may get a little disappointed sometimes because we're not moving as fast as you want to. Certainly not fast enough for me. And the older I get, and I am old. I'm older than Estrus. Now, he has a birthday coming up, and he's still a kid compared to me. But the amazing thing is, you've been leading the way on this for so long, and we've made some progress that I'll talk about in just a minute. But let me go back and talk just a little bit, because I wanted to do something today for you. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, so I can't tell you anything you don't already know on this subject. But I remember back in '64, I'm still in high school, but when the Supreme Court finally said the death penalty was unconstitutional, that it was indeed cruel and unusual punishment because it was capricious, it was arbitrary, it was all those things, and those of us who were aware of it, we knew it was all those things because we knew that depending on what state you were in would determine whether or not you might get the death penalty. In this state, it depends on what county you're in. I mean, if you're in the right county, you can do anything you want to, you won't get the death penalty. They can't afford it. We knew for a fact that if you were a person of color, you were more likely to get the death penalty. And of course, you know, prior to 1964, between 1924 and 64, when the state took over the death executions, we know they had a lot of cases of rape, and rape was a crime that was punishable by death in those days. And I used to wonder, because I knew of many instances, I used to wonder just how many black men were accused of rape that even the judges and jurors knew were innocent. But they were executed. And so when we got to 64 and that Supreme Court ruling, I really had a sigh of relief. I said, we've done it. Some of y'all had done it. I hadn't done much except on a debate team. I said, we've done it. But it wasn't long. It wasn't long until we came back with new rules, new methods. We retired old Sparky. No more execution in the electric chair. We had a new thing. We were going to just stick a needle in somebody's arm, put some drugs in them, and kill them. That was supposed to be humane. And keep in mind, folks, we've had spurts of humanity in this system. You know, prior to 1924, the counties took care of executions in the state. The state took over in 1924. But I'm reminded, some of you were down last night by the courthouse. I mean, we got a proud old courthouse there, built in the late 1890s, opened in 1895, I think. When that courthouse opened, the commissioners thought they had done a humane thing, because what they had done, they had decided to put a hanging chamber right under the dome in the courthouse. In other words, they would take executions out of the public square. They'd hang you. I don't think they ever hanged anybody in the courthouse. Now, there were a couple of instances where people were taken from jails and lynched. But in terms of the law, I don't think we ever did that. But again, we thought we had made it. 361 people were electrocuted between 1924 and 1964. Now, since we started executing again, we have executed 510 people, including 2 this year. I want to talk about a couple of those cases. But before I do, I have a list I'd like to read to you. Carl Blue, Ricky Lewis, Ronnie Treadgill, Richard Cobb, Carol Parr, Jeffrey Williams, Elroy Chester, Kimberly McCarthy, John Quintanilla, Vaughn Ross, Douglas Feldman, Robert Garza, Arturo Diaz, Michael Yoel, Jamie Mikowski, Jerry Martin, Edgar Tamayo, Suzanne. Those are the 16 people executed last year and the 2 that executed this year. And the reason I read their names is because it's important for us not only deal in numbers. These are people. These are humans with identity, with relationships, with family. They're ours. I had a chance just a couple weeks or so ago to tell the son of a man who was executed, in fact, the very first executed in this state after we started back. And I was surprised that when I walked in, he's here today. Keith, do you mind? This is Keith Brooks. And I told him because, see, his father, Charlie Brooks, became the first person in the country killed through lethal injection. First person in this state executed after we started back. And it was his brother actually who asked me, he says, do you think you will live, do you think we, including himself, do you think we'll live long enough to see the executions abolished in Texas? And I told him very honestly, I probably won't. But I think you will. And they're very involved in this movement now, which is great. And the great thing about it, and this is one of the cases I want to talk about, because you see, I remember it well. I thought we were going to stop it. You know, we knew Bill Clements, the governor, had already rejected any kind of clemency. But we had a new governor coming in, Mark White. And we thought maybe he'll do it. He didn't. Of course, Mark White is now one of our strongest advocates because he saw the light. He saw the light. And my theory is that there are people who see the light but are too cowardly to really express their opinions, because if you run for a statewide office in Texas, you can't get elected if you say that you are against the death penalty. Regardless, no matter who they are, and I've been doing this since we've had editorial board meetings, when they come in, that's the question I'm going to ask. And I know if you're running for statewide office what you're going to say, but I got to get you on the record for it, and I got to pray that I can help change your mind, and I got to pray that if you do get elected and you do have something to say, and then this goes for Wendy Davis as well, once you get in that office, hear our cry. I know what you have to say to try to get elected, but once you get there, you better hear our cry. So that's all I'm saying, because I'm trying to light the way. I'm trying to light the way. But as I said, we're talking about humans. The other person I wanted to mention, and I guarantee I'll hurry up. The other person I wanted to mention, by the way, that was 1982, Charlie. Keith. He looks so much like his father. I don't know what's called Charlie. The other person, 1975, and I told this story the other day. I got a call from the chaplain at Huntsville, who said, Mr. Sanders, it looks like Henry is going to go this time. He was talking about Henry Martinez Porter, who had been convicted in Fort Worth for killing a police officer. And he had started writing me when he would come up on bench warrants from Huntsville, appeals cases, whatever, from the Tarrant County Jail, and I got to know him. We wrote, and I started visiting him. But when I got this on a Sunday morning that it looks like Henry's going to go this time, I mean, it was shocking. Because he said Henry doesn't want his family down here. Henry's from San Antonio originally. But he asked if you would come. And of course you say yes to that, even though I was very queasy about it. And later on that afternoon, I got a call from Henry's older brother who said, Mr. Sanders, the chaplain told us that you're going to go down. And we wanted you to know that if Henry is executed on this Tuesday night, the funeral is going to be on Thursday, the Mass. And we'd like you to come and be with the family. Of course, I said, yeah. Anyway, I went down, and my point is this. I was glad I went down because most people who cover executions for the press and all that, the most interesting thing that they think about an execution is what was their last meal. And I had a chance to hear Henry make one of the most eloquent speeches that I've ever heard from anybody. As he was strapped on there, his last words, he mentioned 3 cases. 2 of them, I think you'll remember, and some of you have been around all the time. He mentioned that he had been called cold-blooded throughout his trial. It was a cold-blooded murder. It was a cold-blooded murder. And he brought up the case of Jose Campos Torres, a young guy who was killed by the police in Houston and thrown in the bayou. And Henry asked from his gurney, is that cold-blooded? And then he mentioned the case that I know most of the people in this area will remember. In fact, we just had the 30th anniversary of this murder last year. Santos Rodriguez, 12-year-old boy handcuffed in a police car. He's in the front seat, his brother's in the back seat, and a policeman shoots him dead, playing Russian roulette with him. And it's interesting that Dallas just got around Mayor Rawlings at a summit that we had on race last September, I think it was. Dallas just apologized for that murder. By the way, the cop who killed him was given a 5-year sentence, and he served 18 months. And Henry asked, is that cold-blooded? So as you go about what you're doing, I mean, what I really want to do was to just say that I'm hopeful, because we've made some progress. I understand you had a speaker, maybe by video from New York, and, who may have listed some of these. And what happened to Keith's father, Charlie, won't happen again, because keep in mind, there were 2 co-defendants and they were tried together. As it turned out, and this is the irony, this is the sad, sick irony of how we do things here. They both were sentenced to death. The co-defendant, we still don't know who actually killed the person. The co-defendant case was appealed and overturned, and rather than try it again, the DA came up with a 40-year sentence for this person. So his co-defendant lived. Charlie Brooks was killed, partly because of the way we did things there, and partly because of the law parties, whether you did it or not, the fact that you were there, or might have been there, and there's questions about that, but you're guilty as the person who did it. Well, guess what? We've changed some of those laws. We know for a fact now what you've done, the work you've done, partly through the courts, partly just through legislation, partly just being dogged about it. We've changed it so that we don't execute people who were juveniles at the time they committed a crime anymore. That came a little late for a lot of people, but the Supreme Court has knocked that one down. The Supreme Court has knocked down killing the mentally ill, which we've done quite a bit. We still are doing it because we have this thing that we really don't know what mentally ill means in Texas. And of course, Texas is one of the most mentally ill places in the world. I'm going to turn to government. No, I'm serious. On this issue alone, do you realize, and 2 documented cases, I've written about these cases before, and I can't think of the names off the top of my head. We had 2 cases where the condemned, a day or 2 before they were to be executed, tried to commit suicide. We stopped them from committing suicide, rushed them to Galveston to get treated, and then flew them back and killed them. Is that crazy or what? No, we're not going to let you kill yourself. We're going to kill you. That's totally crazy. And then, I can talk about crazy Texas for a long time, and I can do it because I was born here. So don't get offended. I know the place. The other good news is that after 4 attempts in the legislature, we finally got a law of life without parole. A thing that the prosecutors fought us, because they knew if jurors had that option, they would take it, and they have been taking it. The number of cases filed for capital punishment have gone down in the state. The number of actual executions have gone down in the state. The number of verdicts from juries have gone down in terms of capital verdicts. You can applaud it. You made that happen. That didn't just happen by itself. You made that happen. So that's gone down. And it's really amazing to me that we're able to do it. But we still have, crazy things happening within our criminal justice system. But right now, and I checked last night, I think it's 274 people on death row today in Texas. That's the lowest number on death row that we've had in about 20 or 30 years. Now, again, still not good. Still too many. But we did that. And then the other great news is, and we had a story on it this past week, the drug companies who make the drugs to kill people are being pressured so much, they decided we're not going to sell anymore to states to kill people with it. moral or ethical decision. Most of it's an economic one. But so states are beginning to run out of the drug. If they do, what are they going to do? Someone coming up with some kind of substitute. People, let me just close with this. I'm looking at you and all my old friends. I mean, not old friends. Friends who've been around for a while in this. I'm reminded of something that a poet from Chicago, Carolyn Rogers, said. I mean, and just for the background, Carolyn Rogers, about my age, grew up in the 60s in Chicago. But one day Carolyn got up, cut off her hair, changed her religion, changed her name to Imani Majuwa, and went out on the streets of Chicago and acted a plumb fool, as her mother would say. But Carolyn said, every Saturday night she'd get this call from her mother and said, hey, Carolyn, girl, because you know her mama was not about to call her Imani, right? Said, girl, cut that mess out, come on back home. Come on back to church, come on, yeah, cut that mess out. And Carolyn said one day she did go back home to her mother's house. And that first day she got up and looked in the mirror and she talked to herself. And don't think that's crazy because I do that now. She said the first thing she said when she was back at her mother's house was, the fact is, I don't hate anybody anymore. Can you imagine what the world would be like tomorrow if everybody got up, looked in the mirror and said, I don't hate anybody anymore and acted on that? But the other thing, and this is what reminds me of you, Carolyn said. Carolyn said, you know, there is a well in me. There is a well in me, and if I open up, I can flow forever. So when I see you, I see wells, deep wells that have been tapped and primed, and I came by to tell you that I am so grateful that you have opened up, and I pray that you flow forever.